It's been probably the hardest thing I've ever gone through, and I've gone through some hard shiz in my life. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to come back. That's a pretty big deal to have your child paralyzed. I was a single mom for a long time, and I just always pulled myself up by the bootstraps. And it's a really uncomfortable position to be in when you're known as the expert, the one with the answers. And all of a sudden I still don't have answers on this. I still don't know what to do from day to day. But it also has taught me a lot too about accepting help from other people.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast, not just another interview podcast. Instead, we jump right into a new Shawnism each week. Each one of these is a lesson I've learned, usually the hard way, along the way, in hopes that you can maybe learn from my mistakes and build great things, even bigger, better, faster than I ever did. These are simply true principles, useful tactics for success in life, not just business, unpacked in great depth by extremely successful people each week. My book, also called Let Me Save You 25 Years, where today's topic comes from, is intentionally very short. So think of this as the long version where we can go even deeper into topics like today's, where we have, I'm not joking, one of the top professionals in the world on this very topic to help us go even deeper on Shawnism number 20, hire better than you and let them own it. Okay. So the story in the book that kicks off this Shawnism, we are in bankruptcy. Lovesac is in a full Chapter 11 reorg. I'm supposed to show up to work every day and run the company with a smile, even as we're dismantling stores that we had just opened, laying people off, firing people, shutting things down, buying back franchises, shutting down franchise. I mean, it's a disaster. It is an unmitigated embarrassment. I've just, a year or so before won $1 million on TV with Richard Branson. And now we're in this kind of embarrassing mess, kind of thrust on us by our venture capital partners at the time. It's a whole story. We've scraped our way back, though, to more than 50 locations. We've built, we've clawed our way back. Our strategy has meandered into furniture land. We're selling rugs, bowls, lamps, baskets, decorative accessories. Thankfully, make it through the tunnel, and we're surviving, kind of breaking even again, not making money yet. But it's time for another pivot. The whole furniture game isn't working. We've been hiring people from our competitors, doing the merchant thing, copying their tactics, and it's not working. So we need to get narrower, not broader. And I need the right business partner to help me get this right. We're going to get into heavy advertising. We're seeing what's going on with direct consumer businesses, Casper, Warby Parker, Peloton. Oh my gosh, we have the best couch for that strategy. But this is a whole new business strategy, buying TV advertising, doing digital marketing, converting all of our stores into showrooms. And I need a whole new business partner. So I hire a recruiter. I get this guy down to two candidates. End up making the decision to hire Jack Krause, who has an amazing background in both CPG marketing and retail. And I know, oh my gosh, if I get this right, we are going to dominate. If I get this hire wrong, I don't know if we can survive another reset. It's like an egg on a roof. It could roll either way. So I've got to get this right. Thankfully, we make the right hire. We take the risk on the new business model. And the rest is Lovesac as you know it today. Massive growth, public at 100 million, going on 700 now. Really proud of what we've built. But I reflect on, this topic, hire better than you and let them own it. Early in Lovesac, in the earliest days, I hired people older than me. I hired people with amazing backgrounds, but I think I was just too cocky of an entrepreneur to really let them own it. That's the difference. It wasn't just enough to hire good people, great people that I could, people that I could at least afford. And you can never afford the best talent. So you always have to be stretching, but can you really let them own it? I think I wanted all the credit for every decision. So I had to be in every meeting. I had to approve everything. I had to kind of micromanage them. I had to trump them. I had to sit in meetings and maybe, show them how smart I was by talking so much. And as I've gotten, older and older, I hopefully do a lot less talking, except on the pod, and a lot more listening and a lot more just letting these great people that I've surrounded myself with do it. And I don't agree with everything they do. But unless it's something that I've got to have a certain way for some, I don't know, reason, which comes very rarely, I mostly try and let them do it their way. And as long as it's on strategy overall, it may be a color I didn't like, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Just because I don't like the color doesn't mean that color won't work. Top talent and top teams operating without too much dysfunction will deliver top results. End of story. So shouldn't you try to achieve that? It's always in your benefit to hire the best people you can possibly afford. You have to be brave enough to hire people that are even better than you, at least in some capacity. And that can be threatening. But if you don't really suck, it will be okay. And by the way, maybe you're an owner, maybe you're a leader. Listen, if you're afraid of it and you're afraid of strong people, you already know you have a problem. And I would push you out of your comfort zone, get the strongest people you can, even if you think it threatens your career. It won't. It will actually make you look stronger to those that are watching you from above, whatever that means. And we all have an above. Even as a CEO, I've got a board of directors, I've got investors, and the better people I bring on, even people that are better than me, they're like, well, they could take your position, Shawn. That makes me look better and strengthens the perceptions about me. And of course, same for you. A players want to work with other A players, and they're not going to tolerate a C of, B talent because you were not bold enough to seek them out. Choose people you like, you're going to be stuck with them, or at least people that you can like. They don't have to be your buddies. They don't have to look like you, act like you, speak like you, but you're doomed to spend a lot of time together. So they need to be people that you can at least get along with. Use, the foxhole test, as Jack taught me. If you were stuck in a foxhole with this person, would you want to shoot yourself? So, if you have those misgivings, hold out for someone else. Avoid hiring friends. Avoid hiring family. Just solid advice. If you get it right at the top, especially, the rest will kind of take care of itself. If you get it wrong at the top, it may take you years to find out, and it will be very costly. So take the time, even if it's painful, even if you have to live without for a while, to get the best talent that you can possibly afford. Last little piece of advice, learn to swap I for we. Almost everything that comes out of my mouth now, I try to make, we decided, or, hey, it was our idea to do this or that. Even if it was my idea, try to rarely use I. Try to always make it we as a default language. Make it a habit. It's really hard to do because we all want to deep down take credit for like our brilliant ideas. And I'm sure I mess it up all the time, but I really try hard. Hire better than you and let them own it. It just might save you 25 years. Can't wait to unpack this with our guest. Do you have a job? Do you want a job? Do you want a different job? Today's guest on the pod is very simply one of the world's foremost experts on jobs, careers, hiring, firing, culture building, and all of it. She works with investors and boards and directors and CEOs all over the world to build cultures like Google's or Southwest Air, and not just cultures, but processes that can be scaled and replicated in all realms of human resources. She came up with the leadership legend, Stephen R. Covey, and has built her own practice advising high-growth startups to Fortune 50 companies. No joke. She literally wrote the book on finding career success, and her podcast and dominant social media content in this space is all designed to help you build a better career for yourself. Who better to unpack today's topic with than the job doctor herself, Ms. Tessa White.
Woo, job doctor.
Doctor. No, this is great. So honored to have you, Tessa.
Oh, it's fun to be here. It's fun to talk to another person who's a business professional, who's learning things too.
Yeah, well, that's what this is all about. And I'm curious without prep, when you first heard the topic, hire better than you and let them own it, what came to mind for you?
Duh, period.
Okay.
Of course.
Good.
Of course. But that isn't always what happens, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times I see people hire people who are not as skilled or who couldn't take over the role. And there's something about somebody who wants to be the smartest person in the room,
Yep.
and it hurts them. It hurts their business. I would want to hire
Yep.
people who could take over in my behalf, who could do the job. And that's not necessarily what everybody else does.
Yeah, we're going to go deep into this because I have lived this flaw. I was that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to be really honest about it in the book. I I've had all kinds of people older than me,
Mm-hmm.
more experienced than me, better than me for sure in their realms. Even
Yeah.
I did do that along the way. Even early, I did that, but I was way too bombastic and self-assured and confident and cocky to really let them own it.
Uh-huh.
And that's the other side of that phrase, right? It's one thing to hire great people. I mean, who doesn't want great people around them? I mean, and by the way, that's not obvious because some people are threatened by people better than them, and that's a rough statement, but in any realm. But even if you can get to the place where you can hire better people, are you really willing to let them own it? And if not, the better people they're either not gonna stay, or they're gonna stay for the money, or they're not gonna give you their best, because the best people want to own stuff. They want accountability. They want to perform. And so we'll go deep on this because I'm so embarrassed that I lived this. But therein lies the lesson. There's the opportunity for the lesson. And you've coached some of the best execs in the world on a lot of these very topics. So,
Well, in part because I was a micromanager. I mean, talk about squelching your people. I didn't even know I was a micromanager. I mean, this was pretty late in my career, and I finally had someone, my right hand, had the courage to share what was happening. And I hired great people. I mean, I had a gift for finding magically delicious talent. But
mm.
it's one thing, like you said, to get them, and it's another thing to unleash their capabilities. But I was throwing dirt on the diamond and micromanaging and training my people to shut down their creativity and their thinking, thinking
So
somehow that
it
I
was
had a
feed.
better idea and I should do it better. I was shutting them down. I was actually micromanaging the work they brought back and changing it so often that they finally stopped thinking for themselves. And this person that
Mm.
worked with me finally said, you're never going to get a product better than what's in your brain, and that ought to terrify you. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, geez, yeah, that does terrify me.
Wow. But here's the conundrum, and I want to hold that thought because I want to come back to, the feedback you got in your own journey escaping that shackle. But one of the conundrums that I have faced, and that I think strong people face, is that it's your strength, and it's your ego to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
It's your confidence
Mm-hmm.
in your own abilities, and the magic inside of you and your instincts that get you somewhere.
Yes.
And so and by the way, in the book, I talk about trusting your instincts, and I talk about, in fact, the penultimate chapter is about combining stubbornness, right,
Mm-hmm.
with confident humility. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that latter part that's so hard, because if you do have these strengths, then shouldn't you trust them, lean on them, above all else? And of course, the answer is no. But then how do you balance that? How do you get to a place where you can both trust your gut, trust your instincts, trust your expertise, and let other people own it, so that you can magnify, delegate, get more done, and by the way, as you alluded to, get better out
Mm-hmm.
of it?
Well, that's
So
the conundrum, isn't it?
what's your flash answer to that? Because I think entrepreneurs really wrestle with this, as do, of course, high-powered executives or leaders in general.
Yeah, I write about the 5 stages of career growth, and as a senior leader, a stage 5, one of the things that got you there is your ability to make good calls, not just gut calls, but even calls with data. Your
Yep.
ability is to make the right call. And so how is it that when you get to that stage, that you can screw up? Well, you screw up by not having a good listening ecosystem. You know, I've been fortunate enough to work with some really great senior leaders and some really poor senior leaders. And one of the hallmarks of the good leaders is they have a listening ecosystem beyond their executive team. They don't just listen and make quick decisions. You know, that's what you're trained to do, right? I take in the information, I make a decision, we move forward. But you've got to get it down within the organization, because there's data and feedback that exists lower in the organization that unless you're in touch with it, you'll miss, because your reports are only going to cover your standard reports and the things that you're looking at. They say about 5%, and then there's like 5% or 10% rest of the organization sees it, and then there's dark data that nobody ever looks at. But this dark data can give you the answers to questions, and you can only get at it if you get outside your executive team and you start going to visit departments. You know, in Vivint Solar, I got to go sell with the CEO, because we were dogging on sales. We were saying these door-to-door salespeople, you know, they've got all these problems, until we go knock door to door and realize what the job is. So I think that part of the key is really understanding your organization and getting deep enough to see what's actually going on, instead of making the decisions in your, you know, ivory tower.
Yeah, that's listen, knocking doors, doing sales. In my case, you know, I use the phrase work on the front lines. And I have a chapter in the book, Talk Big, Work Small. And it's so hard for leaders to do it, because, by the way, it's hard for me. I have to push myself.
Sure.
Listen, for years and years, I worked in the showrooms. I mean, that's how we started. But for years and years, I've been out of the showrooms day to day. And I have to really push myself, because I know deep down when I go in there, I'm going to be bugged by the carpet. I'm going to be bugged by the broken light. I'm going to be bugged by some system that doesn't. I'm going to be bugged by how long the day is, working from 10 to 10 in a mall. And do you have the stomach as a leader to stay plugged in? And that's part of, I think, the listening that you're describing. That's only a part of it. There are many other parts of, what other parts of listening do you pick off right at the top?
Well, I would say it's more one dimensional than just listening. It's also, I think, good leaders, they listen behind closed doors, but they don't throw people under the bus. They also, I had a leader once, you know, he got mad at me. He got mad at me because he said I was unethical, which for an HR person is pretty rough to hear. We were giving stock options to senior leaders, and we left this woman out that was on military leave on accident. And I said, well, let's just catch up and give it to her the next time. I mean, this was locked and loaded by the board and approved. And he looked at me and he said, I'm going to teach you a lesson right now that I hope you don't forget. He said, the good leaders do the right thing even when nobody's looking. Good leaders will do the right thing behind closed doors, not just in public. And so part of this concept of being a good leader and listening also includes making sure you right wrongs, and that even if nobody else is going to find out about it, that you would be comfortable if the doors were opened and people could see the way you talk about other people, the way you do things, the way decisions are made, that you're doing the right thing. And I've carried that lesson with me for a long time, because what he did was took stock options out of his grant, the CEO, to give to her, even though she would have no idea that the grant even took place. I've lived to a higher standard since then, because of his sensitivity to doing the right thing and really listening to his own inner, you know, this is what's right. This is the right thing to do, and following through.
Well, and as someone who's running a public company with a board of directors, I can tell you that, you know, you get a program like that locked and loaded. It is just stomach churning to start over,
or
to even make a change, because, you know, weeks and months and potentially tens of thousands of dollars of legal work and everything else has gone into it.
Right.
And it's also embarrassing. It's also chaotic. It also affects so many others. And so to have a leader that had the integrity to do what you described, and that's what it comes down to, right? The ability to make the right decision, even when no one's looking, this integrity that is just, of course, fundamental to all of leadership. And so here we are meandering into leadership when the topic is hire better than you and let them own it, because you can't separate it, right?
You can't. No, you can't. And I think that it used to be that leaders were rewarded for results, period. And I think the model has shifted. And what a Gen Z and a younger millennial crowd is saying is, you got to treat me like a human being. You
Hmm.
have to treat me like I'm not a cog in the wheel,
Hmm.
or I'm going to quiet quit. I mean, that's happening everywhere. And
Yeah.
there's this adversarial nature. And I really do believe that people are waiting for leaders to step into being a humane leader. And I think people are watching. I mean, the way that layoffs are going down is fascinating. I just did a segment on NPR and they said, well, what does a good layoff look like? And
Hmm.
you've watched these CEOs, some of them who have botched layoffs just terribly. And then you've watched some that really seem to have a decent approach about it. And it goes back to, am I treating people like people? Am I treating them the way I would want to be treated? And I honestly think the companies that can do that going into this next generation of the workplace are the ones that are going to keep their people. The companies that
Yeah.
give ownership opportunities for their people, not just for the select few at the top. The people that
Yeah.
really try to help other people win. It's
Yeah. We've been you could say lucky, but intentional at Lovesac. Like every one of our showroom managers owns a piece of the company. We make sure that on day, as soon as they hit their year mark, everyone at Lovesac HQ, everyone is given stock. And look, it's not gonna probably pay for their home, but it might over time. But it's as much symbolic as anything. These are owners, and by the way, this is how we've operated from the beginning. And I don't say that to, I guess, toot my own horn. I say it because people ask me all the time, like, how do you create a great culture? And my simple answer to that is, well, do things. Like someone had the idea. Maybe it was me. Like, let's give ownership to everybody. Well, we have great ideas all the time about making your place a great place to work, or building a team that doesn't suck. Do those things. And then you'll say, well, I don't know. Like, can I do this or that? Can I have a party like this? Can I, get people together in this way? I don't know. Why don't you just try it as a leader? Um, just do things. I know that sounds really basic, but you'd be shocked at how few people are, how scared people are. I think it just changing something, doing something, trying something. You're not married to it. You don't have to,
yeah.
it doesn't have to turn into a company tradition. But if you just do some of the things that come to your mind as a human, as a leader, and of course within some kind of bounds that don't violate your company's policies or whatever. But I think that a good culture is there for everyone to build and to take part in.
Well, I've watched it evolve. I've been in the business long enough. When I first started, we designed stock option plans to make the top 10 super rich, right? They'll stay forever. They can change the company. And I think nowadays, the companies that I feel like are going to win are the ones like yours who are distributing the wealth and recognizing that every role is important and every role can make a difference. And if you understand Gen Z, which that's the world I live in, right? I have all these followers. I have Gen Zs and
Yeah.
millennials, and um, they they'll start their own business, or they'll find a place where they are seen, where they are seen by their company and rewarded for the contributions they bring. And that also sounds very simple, but ownership or ownership like programs are one of the first ways that any company can invest their people in outcomes, in actually making the company turn into something different and being a part of something that changes the industry, the world. And I think that it's an incredibly important concept. And I've seen that shift. The companies that are doing the best now with their people, keeping their people, engaging their people, are the companies that are sharing. And I
Mm.
think that's a really important piece of leadership in the future.
It's tricky, because, people get hung up on CEO pay,
Yep.
and it's a legitimate issue. The problem is it's a competitive world and it's run by market forces. And if a CEO of a certain size company can go here or there and be paid X, and this company is not. And so then the ratios get all out of whack, but it doesn't change the reality. It doesn't change the reality that, the company also needs to retain the CEO. And so look, I think at the top, in the middle, in between, let's talk about leaders of smaller teams. Let's talk about, just within an organization, how can a person in a role that gets the chance to hire, and I put it like that because
Mm-hmm.
you get the chance to create jobs for people. You get the chance to, give someone a career in a place that doesn't suck, in an environment that you get to create that
Yeah.
hopefully doesn't suck, because people are stuck working most of their life. Isn't it a tragedy that we have to spend, let's say, 8 hours a day, maybe more, right, with people that we didn't even choose, in a place we aren't even necessarily passionate about? Maybe we are, maybe you aren't.
Sure.
Well, let's make it at least not suck. So, as someone who gets to hire someone else and build a team of any kind, how can you come to a place where you are hiring better than you? What does that mean, to hire better
Mm-hmm.
than you? Because obviously you're the leader, you're the manager, whatever the role is, and letting people own it. What does that mean
Well,
for
I
these?
look at it like a puzzle. As a leader, hopefully what you're good at and not good at least you have a general idea. And you're trying to put together a puzzle or a patchwork quilt, of the skills that kind of round out and make you whole. Like for me, I'm a dreamer. Oh my gosh, I can dream up the greatest ideas. I can even execute fairly well, but I need a strong project manager to get me over the finish line with things. And so I know that I need that for my team to be whole and to be able to accomplish the greatest things. So that's the first thing I would do is look at what are the puzzle pieces that are going to make me whole, make the team whole. And then
Mm,
it's the simplest thing, but very few leaders do this. I mean, I get hired to go in and tell a company what's wrong and why it's falling apart. And I'm telling you, the people know. All I need to do is pick any random group of people, and I'll sit and visit with them and come back and they'll say, "You're so insightful." I'm like, "No, your people know. Your people your people have gifts and skills, but rarely are they tapped to use their superpowers fully." And the first thing I would do as a leader is sit down and talk to my team members and say, "Tell me what you see from your perspective. What are some things that we're kind of opportunities we're leaving on the table or things we should be doing? And what are some things you know how to do that I'm not fully tapping into? What are some of the superpowers you have and how can those help me?" Because I can't tell you how many people say, "I know how to do X, Y, and Z, but the company only wants me to do X." It's a real
mm.
shame. I guess I'll just do what they want me to do and go home at night. But your people, if they feel seen, will absolutely run through a brick wall for you. And so the first part of being seen is understanding what they know how to do and what they can do and how they see that thing being able to, how can they help fix that thing? And that goes beyond just looking at your people as a job description. You really have to have those conversations. And if you haven't had that specific conversation with your people, I think you're missing a huge opportunity to unleash tremendous potential in them.
Why are leaders threatened to hire really strong people, if they are? Why do you think that
I
exists?
think it's less, that does happen, but I think it's less about that and more about leaders are leaders are under immense amount of pressure, as you know, right? To get results with less budget than they think that they need in almost every
Mm,
case, right? Do
yeah.
this, but I'm going to cut you off at the knees and only give you a fraction of the money you need. And so I don't think we train leaders inherently. I don't think we train leaders. And I think we learn by watching. And because leaders aren't trained, we have a lot of leaders that are average and not a lot of leaders that are great. And so we're learning by watching average leaders. So that's
Mm.
part of, I think, what the problem is. I don't know of a manager or a leader that goes into the office and says, "I am going to be average today," or "I want to screw up my people." I think we all want to win at work. I think that is the deepest need out in the workplace, is that I can make a contribution, and that counts for your leaders. I just think sometimes they don't know how to bring together people. And certainly the fact that we don't communicate well and we avoid conflict has an awful lot to do with why we can't scratch the surface and get down deepest to what's really going on. I call it halfway conversations, and managers are skilled at halfway conversations.
So how do you reconcile the reality that, it's easier to put out epithets like higher, better than you and let them own it.
Sure.
But there's a budget. So you're asking me, I don't mean me, but you're asking some leader,
You're right.
probably, the highest paid person in that organization, even if it's just a small team, to hire better than them. But their budget for role XYZ is certainly wouldn't afford someone of their caliber necessarily, or their pedigree. So how do you deal with that? How do you reconcile that?
I don't find that it has to do with pay, shockingly, as much as it is mindset. Because I think of the people I'm hiring to help me run my business now. They aren't the most experienced necessarily, but they're hardworking, they're experimental. And I think most of the people that I hire have something called intelligent disobedience, which is not something taught in the workplace. People who make intelligent disobedient decisions, where it may be not exactly in line with the policy or what we said, but it makes more sense to do it that way, and digging into and making mature, good risks, decisions that have a good risk of turning out okay, and disobeying maybe the way it's always been done. I really think that that is a skill set that is underrated, and that you can hire for and get talented people that maybe haven't done it before, that if they possess that can do pretty well. But like everything, you need a mix, right? You need a mix of somebody who's been there, done that, with somebody who questions and says, I don't know why we've been there and done that way. Let's try it this way. I think you need a blend of both to really unlock the potential of a team. You almost need somebody that questions why we've done it that way, with somebody who says, oh, I've seen that play out 50 times and it's going to look this way, to kind of, balance it out so you can make those good decisions.
Yeah, it's so tricky. I have a chapter in the book called Mind the Experts, and it's a double entendre, right? Like, on the one hand, we need experts and people with deep experience to help us not redo everything, not have to recreate every wheel.
Right.
On the other hand, those same people are the ones who told me, like, oh, Sactionals will never work. They'll fall apart. They won't. And so it took someone as dumb as me to innovate in a category where the experts just weren't having it, even after I showed it to them.
Yeah.
And so it is a blend. And by the way, I'm back to needing experts to execute on new designs where I don't need to recreate the wheel. People have been building furniture for so long. There's so many great ways to join things and do things. And so it's like you need this weird blend of staying dumb,
yes,
being willing to explore even ideas that have been explored before, combined with expertise that will help you avoid the pitfalls. And so how do you hire? I guess coming back to what you said, if you have, like, in my case, I'm really deep on the dumb side. So this is where it's easy for me. I just go find the experts, and look, I have plenty of political capital because I'm the CEO to override when I need to. I try not to.
Yeah.
But I've learned that. And in the beginning, I overrided, even though I wouldn't admit it at that time. If I look back, I can see where I was overriding everything all the time, because I think I just enjoyed the opportunity to make decisions and build things and do things in my own image. And what's wild is I wish that I would have enjoyed sitting back a little bit and letting people make me rich. Yeah. Letting really smart, I'm going to say that crassly on purpose.
Yeah.
Because I missed the boat. And I could have gotten, that's what this whole book is about. Let me save you 25 years. I think we could have gotten Lovesac where it is now at year 25 in year 15. Yeah. If I would have been humble enough to back up and let people who knew what the crap they were doing make me super successful. Instead, I wanted all the credit.
Well, you bring up such a good point because, where I see people, the pattern I see is, at about director level, senior to VP, the people that are able to make it into the next level have to set aside ego and realize I don't have all the answers. And they have to augment their skill set and superpowers with other people's superpowers. You can't get all the answers even with a team. You have to go outside and see how other companies are doing things. And so that is an essential piece of career growth, that it's a fatal flaw that if you can't do that, you'll stall out. And I also just have a personal belief that for me to be my best, my right hand, so my most important position, my right hand, the person that does things for me, cannot be like me. They have to be kind of the opposite of me. I need somebody who's going to be a naysayer, because otherwise I'm going to pursue a lot of crazy cool stuff, and some of it's going to hit big, but I'm going to waste my time in a lot of ways. And I need that counterbalance. So for me, the more senior you go, you've got to hire somebody that is not like you.
Yes.
And then,
but by the way, it's so fun to work with your pea in a pod.
I know it is, right? You're like, oh, it's a great idea.
Yeah. And I think founders look, I have a one line in the book: don't hire your friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's a simple phrase. And this is coming from someone who was nothing but friends that helped get me going. And I say that with a lot of humility, because I wouldn't be here without my friends who just helped me in the beginning. But when it comes to building a serious organization, just don't stay away from it. It's not worth it. There's so many great people no matter what, and I know that sounds kind of harsh, but that's my opinion. You might feel differently.
No, I don't. I wouldn't hire my friends either.
Family?
No, not family. I've seen that go. Oh, the stories I could tell on that.
Not worth it.
No, it's not worth it. But I also think, in keeping with the same idea that your right hand should be somebody very different from you, that's kind of bugs the crap out of you and is very, the opposite of you in many ways. I also think that the best teams have a mix of young, old, experience, not experience. And what that's going to feel like is chaos at times, and it's going to feel high conflict, which we all avoid. But the teams that do the best have to have the diversity, and they work kind of through the differences of opinion. And I think they end up with the best teams going forward, once they storm and norm and kind of hit this balance with each other. But I tell companies all the time, if you're hiring people that just think like you, look like you, same age as you, whatever, it's going to feel, your meetings are going to be smooth as silk, and you're going to miss the boat because you all think too much alike.
Yeah. There's nothing I like more than a really strong debate, because I've always believed that that's how you get to the real answers. But you need so much to have a really strong debate. You need people who bring something to the debate that isn't just what you already have in your own mind. You need people who are strong enough, especially if you're a leader, especially if you're a founder or CEO, because whether you know it or not, you may not feel that way, because we're all insecure and we all think we're idiots and we all think we're imposters deep down. I mean, there's moments, right, where we all feel that way. But in reality, just by being in a position of leadership, you have a shadow that is longer than you know, and you're not even aware of it. And so when you say things, it carries weight that you're probably not aware of. And it can work for you or against you. It can make you look like a hypocrite. It can make you look like an idiot. But in the end, it still carries weight. And so the ability to have those debates with you in the room, that's why you have to be so careful, because if you slam your staff down and say, we're doing it this way, I mean, that can happen. There's moments where maybe that needs to happen, but they need to be so few and far between, because the minute you do that, you are, I think, weakening people's ability to have real, useful debates with you.
Well, senior leaders, whether they believe it or not, or like it or not, people are afraid of you. And, if you feel like that's too strong of a word, they're at least afraid of disappointing you.
But I'm so friendly. I'm so
Yeah,
What?
we all feel we're friendly. I thought I was super friendly too, but we're afraid of disappointing the leader. And so
Mm,
leaders have to be so careful about listening to other people and the messages they send unwittingly most
mhm.
often about shutting down other points of view, because they will shut down points of view that could be really valuable to them and be training their people to be yes men or yes women, which is really damaging to the organization.
Yeah.
But it happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so good. Um, so you referenced Jim Collins indirectly, things that come from his fantastic book, one of my greatest hits here. Level 5 leadership, uh, so many concepts like that. Any just sort of top level tips and tricks, to hiring better than you and letting people own it that you can, um, that come to mind besides those we've already touched on?
Yeah, I would say no's create silos, and that's a really important thing to understand as a leader. No's shut down people very quickly.
Hmm.
And one of the best CEOs I ever worked with taught me a concept in Jim Collins' book. He said, he came in and we had young leaders and old leaders, and a lot of leaders had been laid off. And so we didn't trust each other. It was really tough. And he taught us the concept of the tyranny of the versus the genius of the and, which
Hmm.
I didn't understand what it meant, but basically it's when there's an either or decision, there's a yes and a no, a winner, a loser, then we get the worst results. But when we can come together and come up with an and, where we both can win and be heard, we come up with better answers. And so one of the things I try to teach leaders to do is to shut down the no's and use instead yes and what if in their language. Yes, I understand what you're saying. Repeat back what the concerns are of that person. And here's my concerns. Here's what I think could get in the way. What if we did this? Which tends to get you to an and versus an or in
And by the way,
conversations with your people.
what's amazing about that tactic is that you can exercise it as you described and still deliver almost the same, message that you wanted to deliver from a content perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but the impact it can have, the positive impact it can have versus the negative impact of a no or an or,
Right.
even if it's almost like the same outcome. And you could say, well, that's manipulation. And look, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I think there's a school of thought that believes that, we've all read. I mean, one of the most terrifying books that I kind of wish no other human got to read is Influence. One
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've read. And but there's a school of leadership that believes leadership is nothing more than influence. Now, whether you believe that or not, I think that there's some truth to it, and the ability to influence others is greatly enhanced when you're utilizing useful tactics. So that's a big one. I'll share one that came to mind is dumb things, dumb little tactical things. I once read in one of the books, I read every book. I try to, and it's about culture and it's about this and that, laughter in the workplace, all these things
Yeah.
little snippets we pick up here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And on one of those, it was like, just the walk of the CEO from their office to the printer or something, and the scowl on their face or the worried look on their face or the
Mm-hmm.
insecure look on their face. And they might just be thinking about lunch. They
Yeah.
might just be thinking about their kids, soccer tournament, but just that moment. And so what's funny is, and so the suggestion in the book was, the minute you walk out of your office or the minute you're faced with anyone, just put on a smile. And what's crazy is from the moment I started doing that, it's wild. I'll sometimes, walk into my in-laws for Thanksgiving, and it's like the minute I pass that threshold, I put on this smile because it's become muscle memory. And I
Yes.
know that sounds really cheesy and probably fake, but now it's not fake because it's authentic, because it's what I do. And I'm not saying that I'm Mr. Jovial. I'm certainly probably not. I can get really task focused. But my point is developing that yes and habit, making it muscle memory, developing, smile through the threshold, these are dumb tactics that can make a huge difference in ways that you don't even know, because no one would ever give you the ramification, like, be able to connect all the ramifications of just simply scowling.
Small things are important. That's why small words make a difference, right? Small behaviors like you're describing, small words make a difference. I I do a lot of study about the generations and the different generations and how it's impacting the workplace. And we've moved into this very short-term thinking, swipe right, swipe left world and a cancel culture. And so we make really quick judgments. I ask my people, would you be willing to bring up if something was wrong in the workplace? Would you bring it up? And 94% said no, I'd leave before I'd bring it up because I shouldn't have to write the script for my employer. I find it so fascinating, this thinking that they should know, I'm out of here, I shouldn't have to say it. That means people are making snap judgments. They are looking at your behavior and whether you're smiling and whether you appear to be liking your job, and subtle differences in language, like a no, right? Too many no's. Like John Gottman, he's a marriage expert, and he says that if your ratio of no's to yeses falls below 5-1, you're headed for divorce. But I think the same is true in the workplace. If your no's are 5 and your yeses are 1, you're also headed towards a workplace divorce. And that's how I think HR, my profession, gets the business prevention department label or the police department label, and how we get different.
But then you think as a leader, like, well, I'm paid to make decisions, I'm paid to run things, I'm paid to lead. Like, why can't I push my prerogative or agenda? And here's my own response to that. I'd love to hear yours, because it ties back to the second half of the statement, right? Let them own it.
Mm-hmm.
A magical observation that somehow I made along the way is, for instance, I have this classic tension with myself and our head of marketing, because he comes out of like the Pepsi school of research and customer feedback and all this, and I come out of like instinct and gut and design and my whatever founder stuff, and we're always debating, and I love it, because to your point, we're very different people, and I think the result's good. But there are many things that need to be decided about: a logo, about taglines, about the brand, about things that really matter to me. I'm the Lovesac guy after all. I'm the founder after all. And I've learned that most of it doesn't really matter. And if I make everything matter, I can always hire people because I can cut them a paycheck. But if you really want people to thrive and love their role and then kick butt in that role, you have to let them own it, and you have to learn to let things go. So you can't let everything go necessarily, but man, it struck me the other day. So this classic example, like, our color at Lovesac became teal as we went through this brand reorg, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. And, teal this and teal that. And it was our color, and it was, it was done through agency work. And I think everyone just assumes like, I love teal because our logo's teal. And the other day I said to someone, like, they said something about teal. And I said, yeah, I don't even like teal. And they were like, what? Like, what? Because, by the way, the original Lovesac logo, the red, orange, yellow, I loved it. It was retro, it was vibey, it was all the stuff. And I designed that, right, so to speak. But at some point, it was fine to be teal, and there was a reason that it made sense, and there was a reason in the landscape of home it made sense, whatever. And I just let it happen because, frankly, it didn't matter. And by the way, by letting it happen, there were lots of people that were really excited and satisfied by it, and they got to own it. And what do I care? And you're like, dude, that's your logo, man. That's your... And I'll tell you, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it works. And by the way, by it working, and by the way, it probably could have worked if it were another color. And it probably could have worked if it were the color I loved as the founder, as the CEO. But it doesn't matter either way, it worked. And by letting it be theirs, they're happy, they're satisfied, they're engaged, they own it. You know what I mean? And then, you don't have to just pay people endlessly to keep a job they hate. And I'm not trying to be shrewd. My point is just, there are so many ramifications that come from hiring really great people and letting them own stuff. And in the end, and I'm not just talking as the owner of the company or the founder, I think as a leader of any team, and learning that just because it wasn't your solution doesn't make it a bad solution.
Yeah, I think we oftentimes are trying to get our people to parrot our position or to be in our army around the position we have on this thing.
Yeah.
And it creates silos. And it's really hard in a cancel culture not to do that. But honestly, that's why, the yes and what if, I really push that with leaders, because we're trying to create partnerships, partner language, partner decisions. And a partner says, okay, let's try it. Let's try it your way. Let's do that thing. And so I think understanding how partners behave and speak to each other and behave with each other is part of this idea of letting your people have a voice. You're hiring them because they have an expertise in something, right? And if you're just going to throw dirt on it, you're going to shut down that person's ability to make a difference. And if you shut down their ability to make a difference, then they will leave. It's inevitable.
I found that in the pursuit of debate, we talked about debate and discussion earlier, because I am in the role I'm in, I have to really kind of, metaphorically grab people by the shoulders and say, listen to me. I need you to argue with me. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm not trying to bring you to my side necessarily. That may happen in the end, but like, we have to talk this out. And I think over time, with enough cajoling, people have learned that and have learned to go toe to toe in arguments. And then we end up, and when I say argument, we're not yelling at each other, but we're discussing them. We're really taking a side. And sometimes I take a side I don't even believe in, because I just need to pressure test this. I need to extract the expertise out of your head so we can get to the right answer. Right. And I think the art of doing that in this day and age, where everyone's so nervous about hurting feelings, and it can be really lost and frankly not necessarily developed, and needs to be, I think, teased out by a strong leader.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think people are afraid they're going to get swiped left. You're going to swipe left on me.
Yeah. And so you can't go swiping left yourself. You have to have the discipline, like you just said, not to say no and not to crap on someone's idea. And so, and by the way, we all make mistakes. We all react in the moment.
Sure.
But it just is years and years of discipline that needs to be developed.
And I think it's a different kind of questioning, instead of saying, what's your idea that sucks or that doesn't suck? Sometimes we let people take an idea and we ask a different kind of question. I have very few leaders who, the good ones, have said things like, well, tell me how will you know if that plan doesn't work? At what point, will you make an adjustment? Have you checked, how many other departments or people have you checked with? What other points of view are you getting on this? We've got to teach our people to do the critical thinking, not just to make the yes or no decision. And I think when we ask our people questions like that and teach them to think for themselves and think through it, then we're also creating better leaders in the long haul as well, instead of saying yes, no, do it, don't do it, which leaders often try and do.
Do you ever let them make an outright mistake? I mean, it's your, let's say, company or prerogative or project. You can't afford mistakes maybe, but do you let them happen?
Well, I would want I had a leader who gave me a tremendous amount of latitude to try something that was super funky. He was trying to increase recruiting, salespeople in the door, right? 100% commission jobs. And I said, I'm going to hire not a recruiter to do this. I'm going to hire somebody who makes B-list movie stars famous again. And he's like, what? Whoa, really? That's who you're going to hire? That's the key hire? And I'm like, yeah, I want somebody who understands social media. And it ended up being the right decision. And we were able to do some super funky creative things that got our recruiting up 25%. But the reason he let me do it is because he asked me these kinds of questions. It's like, okay, I'm going to let you do it. Tell me why you think it's going to work.
By the way, it wasn't certain to have worked out.
Oh, heavens no. It was far from certain. But he said, how will you know it's not working? When will you make a change if it is? What do you think you're going to gain from it? Tell me, help me understand the risks as well as the rewards on this. What's the high upside and what's the low downside? So he made me think through it so I had a better plan around it, but he let me have it, and then he gave me a reasonable amount of time to let it work and said, go go make it happen and see what happens. And because he allowed me a little extra rope to go try this new idea, but we had gates along the way,
Hmm.
it was able to be something that was really a funky, fun idea that worked.
Well, that's
And
great because it comes from your perspective as I'll say as an employee, as a team
mm-hmm,
member. That's great.
yeah,
I'm curious real quick to bury the topic. So make sure, because I like to go deep. Back to hiring.
yeah,
What is your point of view? We talk about hire the best people, but hiring itself is hard. So
it's hard.
any great tactics and thoughts on just hiring?
Okay, I'll probably be all over the map on this one.
That's right.
I got lots of different opinions on it, but I like to see how people's minds work when I hire. So I like to understand how they would behave in certain scenarios, and I like to give them a scenario and come back with me. I like homework assignments. Now, some people will say, no, that's using people, you're getting their knowledge and whatever. But I honestly think if I can see how somebody's mind works by giving them an assignment that they have to turn around in a couple of days,
Hmm.
I learn a heck of a lot about what to expect in that person and what they can do.
Hmm.
It's also, I find it really as important to understand what that person wants to do over a horizon of time, like where they hope to go in their life and the kind of career trajectory they're thinking of, because then I know whether I can fulfill part of it or not.
Yeah.
Because again, my job isn't just to fill the job, my job is to build people. And
Yeah.
if I can't help that person build into the person they want to be, then that may not be a right fit.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think
it's a
that's,
two-way street. Like that's
yeah,
one thing I
absolutely.
fundamentally respect about hiring.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking someone to spend a piece of their life doing this. And it may be years. You may suck years out of their life.
Yeah.
And so I just really respect that on its face.
Mm-hmm. So I really believe that if I come at it as my job is to build a person, not just understand the skills they have, but how can I build them? If I can't do the latter half, if I don't have a confidence I can build them to where they're trying to go, it's not a fit. And I think that's a really important part of hiring today.
And
Because
how do you
if
feel
you're
about
not having conversations day one, and I mean day one, with your new people about here's where I see that we can build a skill set or where you can go. And I don't care if you're in a small company or big company, small
Mhm.
companies, even if you don't have the next promotion for them, you can sure as heck teach them a skill set that they can use in the next company they go to.
I mean,
And if you're not
I've
having that conversation, you're behind the eight ball.
yeah, I've been so bold as look, I say to people sometimes because you can kind of see sometimes like there may not be a direct path for you here right now, but let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to do this for a few years, let's say, and you're going to come out of this with a Rolodex. I said this to one of my own employees that worked directly for me.
Mm-hmm.
That is unbelievable. Like I like the Rolodex you'll have from doing this job at Lovesac will be more valuable than any money I can pay you. I can
Mm-hmm.
afford to pay you in this role. And sure enough, that person went on to become a millionaire off of
Yeah.
their social media connections and
Mm-hmm.
become an influencer themselves. Like
Yeah.
I essentially directed him out of a role, but that was good for him, wasn't it? And by the way, while he was here, he did great work and really helped us level up. And like it pains me that we lost him on one hand, but how could I possibly, as someone who's celebrating entrepreneurship and other entrepreneurs and writing this book to help, how could I possibly want to hold that person down
Yeah.
just to keep them chained to
I
my
agree.
wagon? And I wouldn't. That's my point. And that's where I
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally, and I look, I hope people stay with Lovesac for decades, and some do, and many do. But fundamentally, we have to respect that people have a life to live and a career to build of their own that might transcend
Mm-hmm.
whatever 50-year vision Sean Nelson has.
That's part of seeing the whole person, right? Instead of just seeing them as a cog, something to
Yes.
fix your problem right
Let's
now.
talk about that. So you've experienced your own tragedies and your own experiences in life, even of late. What has that made you change or feel about this idea of seeing the whole person when hiring and when building together?
Well, I'm lucky because I'm my own boss. But I thought during this last 7 months, I thought, what if I had been working somewhere else? How flexible would my employer have been
Mm,
through this? And I don't think they would have stuck with me through it. And that pains me because if I were in corporate America, I have so much to offer somebody. And I'm incredibly loyal as a person. I think a lot of people are very loyal to employers that are loyal to them, even though most, not, a lot, not most, a lot of people believe loyalty is dead.
mm,
So when we treat people the way we would want to be treated, when we give flexibility through maternity, try that on. How many women, how many fantastic women are out there who, for a
mm.
period of time, are asking for flexibility while their children are in school, that we're missing the opportunity to have work in our companies.
Yeah.
I really believe that if we look at marginalized groups that are not fully in the workplace, whether it's disability. I'm now very sensitive to that one, with my son, disabilities, women, those who have even anxiety and depression, which is a big thing. If we have an understanding of the whole person and give greater flexibility, I think we will find that we can unleash the potential of people who really want to do a good job, who just need something different than traditional 40-hour work week employers want to offer. I
Yeah.
really think the future is going to show us that the flexibility we give in part-time, full-time, medium time, work from home, blended, all of these different things are going to become so much the norm because companies will recognize if they can do
Yeah.
that, they and see the whole person and respond to the needs of a whole person, they'll increase their engagement.
Yeah. Speaking of hiring better, in the book I share about Jack Krause, the partner that I brought on in 2015-ish to really help me pivot Lovesac. And it was like an egg on a roof. Like if I get this right, we're going.
Mm-hmm.
If I get it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
we may not make it. And thankfully I got it right. And it was his call really in 2020 where we went full remote right at the outset
Mm-hmm.
with the idea of not coming back. And in that moment, it was very bold. Like nobody was talking about that really. It was like, oh, this might happen. But we went for it. And people moved, people relocated, people went back near their parents, people did all kinds of things that was good for them during COVID. And there's no way to put the lotion back in the bottle. And you know what? We've stuck to it. And I think we are the benefactor. We are picking up amazing people from companies that we could have maybe never afforded before to come to Little Lovesac to help us build this thing because they can have the life they need as a mom, and they work hard, man, and they balance it, and we expect them to. And I am a big believer in this movement. And look, it's not for every company and every role. And like our product development team, they have to be here. They are here and required to move here because they're building products and things like that. And of course, people in our showrooms have to be there. But for many roles in corporate America, they can, and I would argue they should be heavily remote, maybe hybrid like we are today. And look, that's my point of view. And I think I'll be on the right side of history. I think we already are.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I had kids, I couldn't afford to be gone from work. I took 4 weeks maternity leave on my second child and 2 weeks on the
Mm,
third.
mm,
That was not in my best
mm,
interest. It wasn't in the best interest of my child. It was what I thought
of
had to
course.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about the options now available.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I think
Great.
you're going to be on the right side of history. And I'm not saying it's easy to manage because I
Nope.
understand there are difficulties with it, but I do believe it's going to be on the right side of history.
We could build a whole podcast just on that. Look, we could keep going for days. There are endless tactics. There are endless skills. There are endless ways that we can all hire better, and not just in corporate America, and contractors, babysitters, the people that work with our children. But if we apply these principles of hiring better, let's just put it that way, and letting them own it, letting the good people, the people we believe are good, really own things, maybe not being helicopter parents on everything, maybe letting our kids, experience the leadership of others without interfering. There's so many ways that I think we can apply all these principles. Such a blessing, Tessa, to have your expertise weigh in on all this. At the risk of going on forever, is there any last piece of advice, something that you would say to someone building their career, building a future, leading in a role that might save them 25 years? Any life wisdom from Tessa White?
Well, I'm thinking a lot as we talk about leaders and how you can unleash the potential of your people. Think about how pilots are taught. Pilots become pilots because they go into a simulator and they experiment and they learn how to crash, not crash, all different kinds of scenarios. That's how they become a good pilot. And I don't know what makes us think that the people we hire is not supposed to make mistakes, but the only way that somebody's going to become the equivalent of a pilot, a good worker, is to experiment. And so as a leader, your ability to let your people experiment within limits, I think, is a crucial part of teaching people to be self-sufficient and teaching them to be great and learn how to do things and take risks that make sense. And what I see is a lot of leaders who want somebody to just follow what they say. So I would say, understand that experimentation is as critical to your people as it is to a pilot.
By letting someone own it,
Yes,
it will come with some crashes.
it will.
And as long as they're not catastrophic, I say, pick up the pieces and keep moving forward and let these people learn, even as we're learning and improving together. I love the advice. That's brilliant wisdom, Tessa. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can follow Tessa, as I do, at Job Dr. Tessa, 2 S's, on Instagram or on X, Twitter, or YouTube by the same name, and especially TikTok, where she's blown up. Garnered an explosive following there, giving great advice like this and more daily. Her podcast, The Job Doctor, and her book, The Unspoken Truth for Career Success, are both like a secret weapon for you as you shape your own career path. Please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast or video. Please give it a star rating. Every little bit helps. I don't have any advertisers. This is the only way this gets out there, and I'm doing it just to be useful. Maybe share it on social media to help others save a chunk off their own 25-year journey, because you're just that good of a friend. Thank you so much to the captain of careers, the counselor of cultures, the physician of function, the job doctor herself. Thanks, Tessa White.
Thanks, Sean.
And to everyone listening, learn to be humble and relentless enough to hire better than you and let them own it. It just might save you 25 years.